So this is a 1994 Mitsubishi Montero SR, which was the higher trim. And I'm just minding my own business. A buddy sends me a text and says, hey, check this thing out. And he sends me 3 photos of this Montero that's been sitting in a yard, like in the back of a mechanic's place, for 5 years. And just sitting out in the Phoenix, Arizona sun, just baking away. And I guess the story is that it needs a fuel pump and the customer abandoned it. And it probably needs a lot more than just a fuel pump, but I knew that going into it. But I took a look at these 3 photos and I decided to buy it, and then had a buddy store it down in Phoenix for me for about a month or so until I was able to go down and haul it back to Flagstaff. And this 1994 SR, it's a unique vehicle because 94 was kind of the changeover year, and going from like the 3-liter 12-valve engine and now having a bunch of options in the US with the 24-valve 3-liter, but this got the 3.5-liter dual overhead cam engine. And even though it's an SR trim, it does not have the factory rear air locker. It does not have the sunroof, but it does have the bouncy seat, like the suspension seat. And yeah, just a very unique changeover year vehicle. So we have christened this vehicle Cochise, and the goal is to get it back running and driving and use it as a shop vehicle to test Gen 2 parts on. And we've actually already been doing that with testing some parts on it, but we want it running and driving if we can get it there. So pulled the fuel pump, and yeah, it was disgusting. Look at this fuel pump that I just took out of Cochise, the 94 that hasn't run in 5 years. It allegedly needed just a fuel pump, and I don't know if that's all that it needs, but it definitely needs a fuel pump. And the fuel tank is not much better. Look at the fuel that's coming out. Straight varnish, straight brown. Look at that.
Here's the inside of the original tank. You can see how bad it is. I don't know if this is gonna be salvageable, but we'll try. We'll have it acid dipped, see how it comes out, just to have in case this whole project doesn't work.
Look at the fuel center that came out of the original tank.
It's like growing life.
So we could just go get the fuel tank cleaned up and put a new pump in here, toss it back in the vehicle, and see what happens. But that's not necessarily what we're about here. We're not just about like, you know, we're not an auto repair shop. We are in the business of keeping these Monteros on the road and finding like hard to find parts. And that often means working with suppliers all over the world. So you can see here, no fuel tank. We pulled that, so that was the first step, getting everything out. So we're looking at this as an opportunity to find replacement fuel tanks for Gen 2s. So here's the original tank, and here is a replacement tank that we got from one of our suppliers. Now, usually we can find parts, but the question is, if it's, most of our suppliers are overseas, and so the question is it gonna fit the same generation, the same engine? You know, we didn't get diesel engines here in the US, so most of the time when we find hard to find parts, they're made for diesel engines, different trim levels overseas, all these things. And so what we're testing out all the time is the quality of these aftermarket parts, but also the compatibility. Like, is the differences, the subtle differences that Mitsubishi had throughout different markets, are they something that are insurmountable or not to be able to use in the United States? So check it out. We've got the new fuel tank and we've got the original fuel tank. And we can see here that the pump and the gauge sender, that stuff doesn't look like there's going to be any problems going over to the new tank. But the new tank has the vent set up just like a later Gen 2 and Gen 2.5, where it had these 2 in-tank spillover valves or vents. Whereas the early Gen 2s, they had this series of hard lines going into the tank and then out. So that's going to be the first challenge. Secondly, on the side, you've got your fuel filler hose, like the input from the gas station, and then you've got this vent, and both of these go to the fuel filler neck. And on this side, this is 1.5 inches, but on the original, it's 2 inches. So we're gonna need to reduce the hose down there. So that's what we're working with when it comes to the tank. Everything else looks like it's gonna bolt up just fine in terms of the bolt holes. The skid plate looks like it's gonna go on just fine. So we're looking pretty good here. So first thing we did was take everything apart, got the gas tank out of there, got the fuel pump out of the gas tank, got rid of all the lines, and this is what we found. From 92 to 94, this is the setup that Monteros in the US had. On the passenger side, 3 lines came from the fuel tank to this vapor canister. On the driver's side, same thing. 2 lines came to a vapor canister, went through this like check valve, then there's this 2-way valve, and then it went out to this line, which connected to a hard line on the body and ran to the fuel filter on its way towards the engine. The line coming out from the side of the tank that go to the fuel filler neck, which is right here, you've got your main 2-inch hose, and then you've got your vent hose, and that's where connected. So this is what we're trying to work around. None of these things are really available other than this little guy right here. Actually, these are available too, but we don't need a new one. But these vapor canisters, yeah, can't get those anymore. But that's okay, because we're going to try and convert this to a later Montero setup. So if we look at the parts diagrams, here's a 92 through 94, and we've got those vapor canisters with all these lines going around out of the tank. Here's the driver's side one. And we're going to go to the 95 through 2000 type setup, which has these in-tank vents, these 2 vents, or spillover valves, or whatever you want to call them. And then the line, let's see here, this line we're going to take from the tank, and we're going to take it to that check valve and then to the fuel filter. In the California version, it looks like they eliminated that check valve. They just took the line straight to an additional inlet on the fuel filler neck, but we don't have that on this fuel filler neck. So we're gonna go for the standard configuration throughout the US. And yeah, so there's the valves. We got those new that are gonna go in the tank. And when it comes to parts, guys, all the part numbers, everything you need is gonna be listed in the description of this video. Got the skid plate off, gonna transfer that over, and just so you guys know, there is a drain bolt on the bottom of the fuel tank. Okay, got the skid plate bolted on, no problem. One thing though is that the drain bolt isn't lining up with this hole perfectly, or this hole. I don't remember exactly where it was on the original tank, but I did make sure that the drain bolt was snug. And we're gonna run it like this, see if it leaks. If we weren't trying to test this out, I think I would probably put some RTV under that before making sure that it was tight. But we want to just see, like, from the factory, does this thing leak? But yeah, skid plate is on, so we're moving on to assembling the top. All right, next thing I did is cleaned out the inside of the tank with some just like a rag, a paper towel, sprayed some alcohol on it. As you can see, I did get some dirt out of there, just trying to keep as much stuff out of the new filter as possible. And then the next thing I'm gonna do is tip it on its side and blow compressed air through it to try and get anything else that's in there out. So we've got our brand new pump assembly, our new sender, and then the new valve. There's actually 2 valves on the top. Let's do it. All right, we are fully assembled on the fuel tank. Fuel pump is in, fuel sender. We've got the 2 valves. These little nuts that go on all these connections here, 2 foot-pounds. So 24 inch-pounds on those. And we've got, this is our solution for the fuel filler hose. For some reason, this one on this tank is 1 5/8, and everything that I can find on all US Monteros, it was a 2-inch neck. So what we've done to make the 2-inch filler hose work, as well as the fact that the fuel filler pipe at the top is 2-inch, went and got some fuel hose that's 1 5/8, and we just cut it to be the exact length of the pipe, and then this will take up the difference and make it now like a 2-inch ID. So we're gonna give that a shot. Is it the most professional thing? Probably not. It's kind of jerry-rigged, but I think it's gonna work just fine. Maybe the proper way to do it would be to buy like an actual fuel filler hose reducer that goes from like 2 inches to 1.5 inches, and then join that with like a metal union to your 2-inch fuel filler hose. But that would add like about 50 bucks to this project, and this car is worth less than your shirt, so figured why not try this, and if it doesn't work, we know what we should do. So tank is good to go. So the plan is to take a 1/4 inch vapor hose, this bad boy, run it off of this guy, this one pipe that you have coming from the top of the tank vents, and I robbed the overfill limiter 2-way valve from the original setup, and you can test it in the FSM. It tells you how to do that. You blow from the inlet side, you're supposed to have resistance, and then the air passes through, and you blow from the outlet side and the air just passes through freely. The inlet side, just so you know, is the side closest to the fuel tank, and so it goes, you can follow the arrow in the diagram, it goes from fuel tank out to the fuel filter. So I got the new fuel filter going in. You can see that there's 2 new copper washers that go above and below the high pressure line. So you connect that there, you connect this hard line to the bottom of the filter, and then just adjust it tight by hand. Everything is all hooked up. The fuel pump, those 2 lines, and the wire harness on both of those. And then if you come around inside the wheel well, here's what these hoses look like. So that small one right there, that's 1/4 inch coming off the valves on the top of the tank. It comes up, goes to the 2-way check valve, loops over, hooks up to this metal hard line, and goes to the fuel filter. This 5/8 hose just comes off the side of the tank, connects to the side of the fuel filler neck, and then you've got your main 2-inch hose that goes down to the fuel tank itself as well. All right, our to-do list is separated in half. Above the line is things we need to do before we try cranking it. Below the line is things we need to do before we try driving it. All right, so we replaced all the fuel lines. We replaced the tank, the pump, the sender, the valves. We've got new fuel filter. We blew all the fuel lines from this point. So this line and this line, we disconnected those, hooked up the air compressor, blew them backwards, flushed all the old junk out of the lines. Now, that still leaves everything forward at this point going into the engine, like the fuel rail and the fuel injectors, but that's a lot of work to take all this off to clean those. So we're just gonna try it as is. Hopefully with some new gas and some additives, it'll be able to push through any gunk that's in there. Oil change, coolant, and then we're ready to go. And we're gonna put in 1/2 quart of Marvel Mystery Oil, because this thing's, we have no idea what the health of this engine is, so we're gonna clean it out some. And we're going with the finest, cheapest oil we could get. The Quaker State was $15 for these 5 quarts at Walmart, 10W40, so we're going with something thicker, just because, again, we don't know the state of this engine. Hello? Anybody at home? All right, we got a 1.5 gallon of, oops, fuck me. We've got a gallon. Used to be 1.5 gallons of fresh gas, but I just spilled about 1/2 gallon. So we're gonna put that in the tank and see if the tank leaks. Okay, so we got another 1.5 gallons in there. So we got about 3 gallons total. That way we know that we've got the fuel pump submerged and we don't really have any risk of sucking in any air. Now I'm gonna add in just like 2 ounces of Marvel Mystery Oil to help lubricate the system a little bit extra. And then 1/2 a bottle of B12 Chem Tool, which is a very powerful solvent in case we need to bust through any varnish, grime, old fuel that's still in the fuel rail and injectors. All right, you filming, Roberto?
Yeah, it's on. We're ready.
All right, well, we got a hose. We got some fire extinguishers. Let me see what happens here. That's encouraging. Try that again. I think it's priming? Doesn't sound like it. Trying. Is it going?
That's it.
Almost idling on its own. Yeah, boy.
Getting there.
It doesn't sound bad. There's no knob. Okay, it's idling on its own now.
It needs more oil. Here's the lifters.
Yeah. We did it!
Like, look at this fat girl. Let's see.
We did it! Junkyard rescue. 5 years. This car's been waiting 5 years to run. We did it, folks. Another Montero is back from the dead. I thought it was 5 years without running, but the tag hasn't been renewed since 2015, so that's 7 years. And in true roadkill fashion, I haven't even looked into this car at the DMV, so who knows? It might be hot. We might have just fixed it for somebody else. We'll find out soon.